Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome back to On Renewables, the podcast brought to you by the UAE's mission to IRENA, that's the International Renewable Energy Agency. My name is Nawal Al-Hosseini, I'm the UAE's permanent representative to IRENA, and I'm your host for this podcast series that speaks to the most influential thought leaders in the fields of renewable energy, climate change, sustainability, and the environment about the issues shaping the world we live in. My guest this episode is His Excellency Engineer Awaidha Murshed Al Marar, Chairman of the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy. He's also a member of the Abu Dhabi Executive Council. He serves as a board member of the Abu Dhabi Oil and Gas Company. He is a member of the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation Board of Directors. Your Excellency, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you with us here today. Thank you for joining us on Renewables.
It's my pleasure, Doctor. I'm looking forward that we can add value to your audience and knowledge as well.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I have no doubt. It has been a remarkable and very challenging couple of years that we had globally, but it has been specifically challenging for the energy sector and for all of us actually. So before we dive into this, can you just maybe give us some reflection on how this impacted you personally, the way Awaidha Murshed is working and the way DOE is going around in its business?
I think this have impacted everybody around the globe. At my personal level, I think I came to know my family maybe closer. I play with Muhammad now and Abdullah more often. And you know what, even I think after pandemic and things go back to normal, I would not let that go again because I truly missed being with family, give them at least their right, as I give as well focus on work-related issues. But that period, and I see it, it's a wake-up call. Truly, it's a wake-up call at a personal level. I went back to my normal life. I started cooking. I learned how to do the steak properly without actually burning it. So I think people will always remember the pandemic and how do we actually become much, much closer together. It did not divide us, but actually it brought us together through one important issue, which is human capital.
Absolutely true, Your Excellency. And that has been the global sense that we proved that by coming together, that's the only way for us to face such a global challenge. So if we look at those challenges in terms of a sector, so looking deep dive into the energy sector, the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy in recent technical report highlighted, and let me quote, that over the course of a challenging year, the energy sector demonstrated its agility and its readiness to address challenges. Can you please educate us about those challenges? What were they and how did DOE tackle them?
Doctor, I think the biggest challenge we were facing the unknown at that time. Things were evolving so quick. Government have approached some restriction until we reached a lockdown. So that was the big challenge, and how can we still provide the service to the standard of international code and practice which we regulate and we make sure that the operating companies are meeting while maintaining the safety and the importance of human capital when it comes to protecting them against any diseases. So that was the biggest challenge. But Department of Energy went way beyond this. Since everybody actually at home, whether working or kids studying at home, we have declared a decree of banning disconnecting services, water or electricity, regardless even of the payment, whether a customer have paid or not. We said we want to stand out and be ready that health is being maintained and education maintained as well, and that will never happen without electricity. I think I'm lucky that we had that experience to test all our SOPs, to test our readiness and so forth.
Absolutely fascinating to see how the UAE actually have set a model on how to address any global challenge and even an opportunity by bringing everybody together and making sure that decisions are being made. At the heart of it is the well-being of the human beings, which is very important. Moving to another important element, which I'm sure you are part of this conversation, that the number one priority for most, if not all, energy stakeholders is energy transition.
Correct.
How we can transition our energy system to include and to be more sustainable and have more renewable energy in that energy mix. And the UAE, as you know, has been recognized globally as a first mover when it comes to the sector. So back to the Department of Energy, can you explain what does this transition mean to the UAE and what is the UAE is doing to get there?
Actually, every countries worldwide are moving in that direction, moving to always improve on how things is being done. So the question to Department of Energy, how do we use all of that development to meet certain targets that are important for us? Number one, the livability and human lifestyle, and that is totally touching their environmental aspects when it comes to the CO2 emission. So the least CO2 emission technology, you will find it in Abu Dhabi. So we are coping up with international trend. We have, as you are aware, and your audience is well aware, we are part of the Paris Agreement. We have pushed for and participated in many initiatives worldwide. 15 years ago, Masdar was a visionary set up by government. Today, Masdar owns tons of projects in more than 30 countries worldwide. And on top of that, they're doing it saving CO2 emission, but at the same time, actually generating revenue and money as a business case as well. We are hosting COP28, and that is as well as a big move toward belief and implementing principles that are actually saving our emission, and that all goes into the transitions. So we are focusing, as other countries as well, to actually change our way of doing business to a better way, more efficient and least harmful to the environment.
So speaking about the way that we do things in line with global trends, but actually setting trends, the way we initiate and accelerate progress in certain technologies, the UAE today, to your point, is I think the only OPEC country that doesn't only export hydrocarbons but also exports renewable energy around the world through Masdar and many other companies that the UAE operates in the UAE. So do you think, Your Excellency, there is a role for hydrocarbon to play in a future cleaner energy mix?
Doctora, hydrocarbon already played a big role. I'll tell you, the investment we made on Masdar, the investment we made and the money that, or the capital raising of money that we put on solar projects such as PV or Al Dhafra now, are actually the revenue generated by the hydrocarbon. So I think the hydrocarbon it's a tool that we are using to reach our visionary leadership targets, which is let's do the transition of energy from the hydrocarbon to a better, good standard. Today, all the power that are actually supplied to ADNOC through the grid is being generated by green energy from solar and clean as well from the nuclear. Furthermore, ADNOC as well is facilitating the renewable when it comes to the hydrogen. ADNOC today, with the leadership of their CEO, is actually pushing on exporting hydrogen as blue in the beginning, which they did successfully. So it's a matter of now producing it as a green, and then all the logistic is in place. So the principle of less CO2 emission is there embedded within the leadership. Within the leadership is actually giving direction to the hydrocarbon business or to the renewable business. It's always there. The integrity and the belief of protecting our environment is there. This is what we were actually brought up to, and we will not let it go.
That's fascinating. But another important and very critical element for a successful strategies for energy transition, as I'm sure you know, is demand side management.
Yeah.
And it's very important, both locally and regionally. What is DOE doing to tackle that? I believe which is a big challenge because it's very much linked to human behavior, and that's
Correct.
one of our biggest both challenges and opportunities to achieve energy transition.
As a regulator, we have a system in place called a statement of future requirement, where we look at the demand, we challenge the demand, and then we make sure that we can supply this demand with a little bit of margin as a security margin to maintain the security of supply. So we could always run after demand, but sometimes we need to pause and say, is that demand is a true demand? So this is where we come up with a demand side management strategy. We have put it in place. Abu Dhabi government have approved that about a year ago. It asked for reduction on the consumption of normal consumption of electricity and water, 23% and 32% respectively. And those actually be made to change people behavior on the demand side. Beside looking at the supply and demand, we've actually created the first model in Abu Dhabi called the integrated energy model. So we look at scenario of demand, we change some parameters that it could happen, and then look at the supply part. For example, behavior of customer on electric vehicles. So if that goes natural growth as a customer preference or incentive by government, how that will change the demand pattern. So we do a lot of scenarios in our control room here and then test how can we supply it with the least cost of energy and the least as well impact on CO2. We went even further than this. We've tapped in, and thankfully for the Ministry of Education at the federal level as well as the Emirates level, they've opened all their syllabus to us, going through them and trying to collect and tap in and connect the dots between their syllabus when it comes to their energy, and trying to actually update that syllabus and trying to make sense of what things they need to be taught while they are kids and the school. So when they will be in charge of that tap or that switch of electricity, they will remember that how important the energy is.
Absolutely, and it is working, because I can see how now the younger they are, my nieces and nephews, when they come back home, they dictate how we, when and how we turn off the lights and the water. So it's absolutely working.
Yeah.
Back to what the UAE is doing, and the UAE has been known to be very bold in their initiatives and everything they approach. So one of the, and for me is a highlight of 2021, is the UAE's announcement of the net zero by 2050 strategic initiatives. Can you tell us what does that mean, and how would the UAE contribute to that? And in practical terms, how do you see the UAE achieving this?
I think the biggest enabler to achieve it is the commitment that has been made by the government.
Okay.
And announced, and we are all aligned to that commitment. From our role as a policymaker and regulator, it's a matter that we need to make sure that our policy is in place to help that transition and to help that limitation when it comes to, for example, projects that are less CO2 emissions, when it comes to putting some of restriction on CO2 generation as well on the electricity part and the water. We've also engaged with our environmental agency as well, that they are also on board as a regulator on top of us as well, to make sure that we are all collectively meeting those targets. Those are on the current running projects. But in the future, other projects, we are focusing on putting more solar. For example, Noor Abu Dhabi is already in operation, and that have got tremendous value of CO2 emission. Al Dhafra as well, a project of 2 gigawatt is already in construction. That will also eliminate CO2 emission. And let's not forget the biggest project that are contributing to less CO2 emission, which is Baraka power plant. Unit 1 and 2 already in operation, 3 and 4 are coming. So all of that will actually contribute on reducing CO2 emission. And let me also be proud of the CO2 emission that will be reduced from ADNOC operation as well, by tapping into clean and green energy through their connected load.
So, Your Excellency, Abu Dhabi, and I'm not saying this because I am totally biased, I'm saying this because it's a fact. Abu Dhabi is a capital of sustainability. Abu Dhabi is the home of sustainability, and in the last decades there has been incredible milestones that we've seen hosted here in Abu Dhabi. But for Your Excellency, for Engineer Awaidha Murshed, what is the one point in that rapid, basically, adaptation of sustainability efforts that stand out as we are definitely doing something remarkable here?
I think the only one that keeps us going is the belief on that sustainability. Because we can sit here and list all of the projects that have been done, but I think the one important issue is the true belief that this is not being forced on us as a sustainability. This is what we actually represent UAE. Doctor, let me give you an example to demonstrate this. I lived on the western region, Al Dhafra part. While I'm doing a school, His Highness Sheikh Zayed used to come to the western region as a project instruction and a project related issues. And 99% of his project was planting. So I've witnessed land that was truly desert, and then 2 years later on you see it green. So isn't that sustainability? Isn't that demonstration of an early belief that we were raised on, which is actually converting this desert, empty desert, to actually an area that you can enjoy? So that was the early cornerstone that was put in UAE. Then followed by a belief of visionary Sheikh Mohammed and Sheikh Khalifa of establishing Masdar, project that Sheikh Khalifa have witnessed on Al Dhafra area, the Shams 1 project.
True.
Though it at that time was as a pioneering, now the cost of electricity went way below that. That as well demonstrate that we had an early belief that we need to tap into something else. The revenue and the wealth that have been generated by the hydrocarbon will never sustain unless we went and jumped the jump to be on the sustainable side. So I think this is truly the catching word, is the belief, and we were not being forced, but the belief that we had of the sustainability. It's in our blood, it's in our culture. We've been brought up to that, and we will never let it go.
So, Your Excellency, so far we've explored some of very important, strong topics that's shaping the UAE energy landscape here. But it's time now to get to know you a little bit better. So I have some personal questions to ask you, if you are ready.
Be my guest, Victoria.
Why does energy matter to you?
It matters because I think it's everywhere. It's in our body, it is in the sun. Without it, we will not be able to actually move an inch. I never knew that the energy is important really. I started my career on project and construction. Now I look at how those buildings that we build around Abu Dhabi actually consuming energy. So now it actually makes more sense of what energy means to me. So hopefully I will always remember this terminology and use the energy in the right direction with the best value of it as well.
So you mentioned you studied civil engineering, and I believe you studied civil engineering in Arizona, the US. What is your fondest moment of that time of your life?
I think when I decided to shift from what I loved as a major to a civil engineering.
Okay.
Because when I went there, actually I wanted to do an aerospace engineering because I have been always dreamed of flying. So I did the first 1 year with a major of aerospace, but then my mother got to know this, and I'm sure now maybe she's watching your episode, and she said, haven't I told you should never fly? So I've looked at the syllabus, I've looked at what I could actually change to, and I've changed to the civil engineering. And I think that was a remarkable still in my memory. But recently, about 3 years ago, I went there and I brought with me some seeds way from the desert that were actually a wild tree that are big and doesn't consume water. So I brought them here, I planted them, and they actually now big. They start flowering this year now.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's very, very nice.
They're nice.
So speaking about flowering seeds, what is your biggest hope for the UAE?
I think being the example to other countries where we put our wealth on the right direction, that's serving humanities, serving the land, and have the population of people that are actually adding value each time. Our assets is people, and if we have the people being together with one agenda, and one agenda only is to make a success of this country, then I think that is an ultimate goal, regardless of how many square meter UAE is. But if we are all together with one agenda, as it was and still is based on Sheikh Zayed visionary that was put, I think we will truly do a remarkable job.
Fantastic. So what is the one piece of advice would you give your 18 years old young self?
If I were there at that time, I will truly learn the balance of life.
Okay.
Truly learn that because it's not always work issues, but it's part of mental development, part of body development, even financial knowledge and development as well, alongside spiritual as well. So I think the advice that I will give to young people is to an early look at the importance of how do you balance your life. There are 5 or 4 factors people sometimes call them, but they are all important.
Your Excellency, it was an absolute privilege to have you with us on Renewables. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening to On Renewables. If you liked us, subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us a rating on Apple Podcast. And if you've got any feedback or questions for any of us at the UAE Mission, leave us a comment on our social media pages on Instagram and on Twitter. Thanks for joining us and see you next time.